Welcome to Top of the Line. This is the podcast version of our YouTube show. New episodes every Monday and Friday where we talk about audio and hi-fi related themes.
If you have any requests for a future episode, send us an email, totl@abyssheadphones.com.
We figured we'd take this opportunity to have a little chat about DACs. What makes a good DAC? What the differences are between a good DAC and a bad DAC.
Oh, that kind of reminds me of a movie.
Oh, yeah? Which one's that?
Are you a good witch or a bad witch?
A class like that, but about DACs.
Good DACs or bad DACs, huh?
So for the uninitiated, DAC in this case is a digital analog converter.
Yeah.
Plug in your computer, your phone, or whatever, and it gives you analog audio out that you plug into your headphone amplifier, which then goes into your headphones.
Yeah, I mean, you could fit a DAC in a USB stick.
Right,
which they do, even with headphone and a headphone amp too, all on a USB stick. So it's easy to implement that. But when you want the real deal,
the best of the best,
it takes a bit of real estate. Because you're dealing with DACs are composed of not just the D to A converter itself, but the analog section, the power supply section, and various iterations of this, that, and
they're pretty complicated.
So yeah, they'd be surprised what's in them. I mean, especially like this the 11 audio here, the R2R ladder DAC. It's got a pretty good sized board on it, just full of resistors, which create the ladder for the DAC. It's a different kind of architecture versus the your typical all-in-one chip.
So what does a DAC do? How does it work? I think most people are aware digital audio is stored more or less as a 0 and a 1 state, highs and lows, right? And so you have coming into this DAC in digital form, you have a voltage that varies between high and low.
Which is ones and zeros.
Which represents the ones and the zeros.
And it's doing that tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of times
potentially
a second.
Millions, yeah.
Or millions in a higher
some
res-
cases.
Yeah, a second.
It's a lot.
So yeah, that's a pretty high-speed data chain.
Right.
That this thing's got to make into music.
So there's a few issues with that. The rate of change of this high and low isn't always perfect, so the edges could get a little squished. Sometimes when it goes up, it actually overshoots, and you get a little noise and ringing. Sometimes when it goes down, it's a little irregular. There's slope to it, and it's very difficult for the DAC to know exactly when this 1 and 0 occurred, which it matters, because this is happening a lot. So if it's a little off, it's a little out of sync, there's troubles there. So it's the DAC's job to determine exactly when these events occur, and then to take them, decode it, figure out what it's supposed to be in analog form, and convert it to then the analog representation, which is more or less a smooth waveform, representative of the music.
And then ultimately take that analog waveform, buffer it somehow so that it's at the proper voltage so that it can output it to drive, say, an outside external amplifier or something else. So you have an analog section as well that's amplifying what's coming off the DAC because it's a smaller signal. And and sending it out to the real world through a set of interconnect cables, RCA, XLR, what have you.
And that's all happening in real time.
Yeah,
that's the problem.
Very quickly, at the speed of light, practically.
Yeah, and these days it's actually very easy to make a DAC because it's so commonplace. You get tiny little chip DACs, dime a dozen. They're in so many devices now. You get them in little dongles and stuff like that. They're built into your phone. They're built into laptops, of course. It's already integrated in these devices.
Yeah, it's a one-chip solution pretty much.
Yeah, and they work pretty well.
Yeah, right.
But they're not perfect. Nothing's perfect.
Yeah, you need to surround that chipset with a lot of goodness to really
get the most.
Clean up its act. Power supplies. Power is very good. Clean power.
It's very difficult to do very, very well, but pretty easy to do well enough. So that's the issue. In the high end, since we care so much about the absolute best we could get, we have these big external boxes that we call DACs, right? And rather than using the integrated one in your phone, which is okay, but not perfect, we go through the trouble of having a very large, somewhat costly box external that tries to solve all the issues.
Well, because digital is kind of like a step. It's step. Every bit is put together to make a waveform, make analog. The harsh sound is kind of that step nature of it coming through. And we're trying with as you get up in the food chain of DACs, you're trying that obviously should go away to a much higher level, and that's kind of what harshness is. It's kind of like, think of it as like, steps versus a slide, I guess would be one way to describe it, where the slide is smooth going down versus going down a set of stairs.
Well, this would be pure analog, would be perfectly smooth.
Yeah,
ideally.
usually you're dealing with mostly sinusoidal waveforms, which are smooth, and then where digital conversion process, there's some amount of noise mixed in there that.
Well, that's why ideally you'd run higher and higher resolutions to make the steps smaller, so it gets closer and closer, but it never gets to perfectly analog.
Yeah, and that usually works. I mean, that's kind of, I think, one of the reasons why we kind of like DSD files or higher res files versus lesser, is because I think it might actually make an easier job of the DAC to be able to convert it.
It certainly mitigates
in some
a
ways.
lot of the issues.
You're feeding it more information, essentially.
Yeah. Think of a cymbal crash, right? And we'll try to put some examples up somewhere.
Ooh.
But you think of a cymbal crash, right? And that in itself seems harsh, right? You're
Right.
listening to a cymbal, particularly if you're standing in front of it, But now you take that and you make it sound like there's a saw rubbing against it while it's,
That's hard to imagine.
And so now it sounds more like rather than,
Yeah.
and that's digital harshness. And there's different levels of it, and what helps with a lot of people with the lower end side of DACs, or like if you just have an integrated DAC, is that if you're not running headphones or speakers that are particularly revealing, it kind of gets filtered out, which is a positive thing. You're not really hearing that. But as you step up the chain with in-ears or headphones or monitors or whatever, all of a sudden that DAC that seemed okay before is annoying.
Yeah, for the most part, this can be shocking to people that haven't really experienced it. But if you have low-end gear that's not particularly resolving, you could listen on a low-end DAC and you probably won't tell the difference. You could try 20 different DACs. You probably won't hear any difference.
Probably all pretty much sound the same.
Pretty much the same.
Yeah.
Because DACs, in a way, they can be kind of the most difficult thing to get right and also the least important until you get to the high end. You get to like mid-range and up, and then you kind of find a lot of times that the DAC is the thing that may make more of the change than the rest of the gear. But in the low end, they all pretty much sound the same because usually your gear isn't resolving enough because the DACs are plenty good. We're talking about such a small difference here that it's not really perceivable until you get to the upper range. But when you get there, absolutely, you could hear these things.
It's that percentage game, in high end.
Well, yeah.
Everyone's after a few tenths of percent or so, and I think part of it is because people at that end of things focus on those things.
That is pretty, yeah. It's pretty much everybody. They have everything already sorted out,
right.
And now they're trying to find a DAC.
This is what's left.
They know they've heard a
times.
lot of DACs, and it's like they don't like a lot of them now that they liked before because now the rest of the system's so good, and now the DAC's the limiting factor.
Yeah.
Usually the DAC isn't the limiting factor for like the lower to mid range. They're good enough.
That's kind of the evolution of a system in general. If you start at the bottom end of things and over time work your way up, you'll find you come full circle a few times.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, now I got, you do the DAC and then the amp, or not just the DAC and a headphone, and you get a better headphone. Now all of a sudden it doesn't sound good, and you might blame the new headphone, but it's really the DAC. So now you get a new DAC, and it's kind of keep going around and around to you as you're going up the ladder, building a system. So where some people are the opposite extreme, they can afford it, and they step in and go, "What do I need to buy?"
Yeah, that does
They
happen.
just get it and they're done. That's the other way to handle it too, But
Yeah, you see less of that, but
Yeah.
for the most part, it seems like people end up as the DAC being the last thing they upgrade because they kind of jumped up through the chain and everything else got upgraded, and now they're starting to realize maybe the DAC is the limiting factor. And how do you really know? That's trouble.
Well,
it is
without
very
trying.
hard without trying or hearing, without
It's tough.
understanding. It's kind of like almost a difference between like a printer paper and sandpaper when viewed at a distance. You can't really see the difference, right? But you touch it, you can feel one's bumpy, one's rough,
Right.
the other's smooth.
You have to experience
Right.
it.
It's really hard to tell unless you really experience it. But the easiest way to put it is a low-end DAC or a DAC that isn't quite as refined as a high-end one will make your music sound harsher or a bit less enjoyable. And what that means kind of actually varies from person to person to some extent. But generally, to me at least, it's just is less enjoyable. It's everything seems more offensive if there's a sharp note, a cymbal hit, or something like that, or a loud noise. It's a bit more bright or etching or stings a bit more than it would if it was smoother.
Yeah, and you have to put this in context of the entire system too. You know, the amplifier could be a similar nature where it doesn't do bottom end so well.
The first thing, especially in higher end DACs, like ones that like actually are worth their cost usually. The first thing I notice is they have like a very black background. Everything's, very separated. Everything's like, pinpoint, which you don't really get in the low end. Everything's kind of more flat.
It's like really quiet.
Quiet.
Yeah.
And
you put your headphone on or whatever, and you're
it's
like, I don't even hear anything.
Yeah, right.
The silence between the notes type thing.
It's hard to get there. You need to be some of the best DACs do that.
Yeah.
Which, that's why a lot of people say a lot of DACs sound the same in the lower end, and they do for that. Like that, they all pretty much have the same kind of background sound until you get to the high end, and then it's just black, pitch black. It's kind of like the first time you saw an OLED TV.
Yeah, right.
You're like, oh, like you got so used to seeing LCDs in gray blacks.
You never really saw
you don't
black.
even really see it, but until you hear that
Yeah.
clean black background, it's like.
And then what that brings out is subtlety in detail, because with that background noise dropped down, gone, now the tiniest little things become audible that were covered up or masked before by that background. So,
in the noise.
Yeah, so now all of a sudden all sounds pop more, they sound more lively, and actually you pick up on that, your brain picks up on that, and it sounds more real to you.
That's
it
why
sounds less artificial.
More 3D like.
Yeah, right, which gives you more sense
realistic.
of space. Yeah, that tiny little details is what makes the thing sound real.
Well, it's just like with the OLED TVs. They have a lot more pop to them.
Yeah.
Due to the high contrast and everything. And you get the subtle black color changes and everything. So everything looks more real and more 3D.
And it's funny, though, we got all this technology, right, getting up to, we're at 8K now with TVs, but you still can't make a TV look like you're looking out a window.
Not quite.
It's not there yet, which is kind of
nowhere
funny.
near the dynamic range.
Yeah,
Still.
the brightness
Can't
can't
do
do like outdoors. It's so bright.
Can't do it.
Can't do
but
it.
we're getting it pretty close with audio. Really pretty close,
A lot closer than video.
Some of the DAC, upper end DAC manufacturers, wow, they got a lot of R&D in it, and they've really, really clear. The clarity, I think, is what really stuns you. It just sounds so
Effortless.
Yeah, just natural.
Yeah.
Nothing's really sticking out. It's not bothering you in any way. You could play anything. And so it gets to a pretty good level, but you're talking, they're still expensive. I mean, we see at that level, we're usually above 10 grand for the DAC, which for some people are like, Jesus Christ, that's my car,
Right.
And it's true.
That's the biggest issue with the DAC. It makes them hard to really recommend until you're in the stratosphere with the other gear, because there is no DAC that we know of that's cheap and performs amazing.
Yeah, right.
If you're in that range, just get a low cost one, because there's not a big difference.
Yeah.
You're not going to perceive much of a difference. But you start getting to the high end, and all your other gear is super duper high end stuff, there's differences for sure. And to some people, it's a world of difference. A lot of times with especially worse recordings, a good DAC may have some fancy filters in it that makes it sound so much more lifelike, so much more realistic, and it makes your brain a bit more convinced that you're really there.
Well, I think in particular, it doesn't matter as much in the low end. You're looking for features and size,
Pretty much.
Like how big it is, displays, inputs, outputs. Does it have XLRs? Does it not have XLRs?
Does it run on battery, or does it need to be plugged in?
Right.
Yeah, they're all going to work very similar. It's unlikely you're going to hear a difference in the low end stuff.
But then once you get up to the higher end, then you actually usually lose features, and they only focus on being like, a DAC.
They tend to have a shit ton of inputs
Right.
at the high end.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at the backside of these things. I mean, it's not just like one USB input, right? There's like 12 inputs.
They're made to do it all,
Yeah, and analog out. So
So-
what do you have for a source that's digital? I will convert that to
convert
audio for
anything
you.
to anything, connect, but just be a DAC. Right?
Yeah.
No other features. It normally is usually not preamps or anything. So I guess it depends what you're looking for in the low end. You're more feature based, I'd say. But then once you get to the high end, yeah, you're looking for that enjoyment.
It's
right?
all about the sound.
Yeah, you're looking for holographic black background detail monster,
Yeah.
ideally,
Yep.
which they're out there, but they're usually expensive.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun. And when you can actually reach a point where you can make a DAC sound like a reel-to-reel, you're doing pretty good. I'm talking a real good reel-to-reel, you know, like a $100,000 machine. Now we're talking.
The most pure of analog.
Yes, pure analog, right off of tape. That's a beautiful thing. But anyway, I think we've talked enough about this. Hopefully, we didn't confuse people more than more than explain it. But if we did, please mention in the comments what misunderstanding, and we'll try to clarify it. But anyway, thank you everybody for watching, and take care of yourselves.